So, welcome to Synchronistic Wealth Activation Global Party. And today I have someone amazing with us who is not only a wonderful friend, mentor, priestess, incredible leader in synchronistic wealth, in business building with spirituality, multiple author, CEO of two companies, Millionaire Yogi and New Earth Visionary. She's also a leader in digital events for online events of this new digital era. She is someone who plans events using the best creative platforms that means her clients have been able to successfully pivot from live in the flesh to global interactive festivals and so many conferences. She's not only an author with a book on Amazon, but also a public speaker on spiritual businesses. High Priestess mentors 12 Kings, a program initiating men into mastery of cyclical magic, as well as running ceremonies and rituals for so many people. She has shape-shifted many times and also runs a $7 million business with 4 books under her belt. It is really an honor and a huge humble moment for me to welcome Inarra Griffyn to our stage today to share with you not only how she did it, but also exactly the tools that you need.
Oh, thank you so much. That was an epic intro.
Yeah, I just
Woo!
woo! Yeah,
Yes.
just really excited to have you today because in the short time that I've known you from Awoken, which is a platform, by the way, guys, that you have to check out with some incredible, just spiritual leaders and film producers in this era. And the first time that I met you, I just knew straight away that not only did you embody the business and savvy sense of a PR of a marketing person, but he also had such a strong grounding, and there was no question around that. And
Oh,
that's the era that we're in. So
thank you.
yeah,
I appreciate that. Yeah.
yeah,
And we're in this epic new era, and it's been described as the new Earth. It's been described as Society 5.0, and it's also been described as the Aquarian Age. And we stepped into that literally due to astrological terms on the winter solstice of 2020. And now we're into the second month into that. And so we're seeing all these people emerge, many leaders, and I think there'll be many female leaders, actually, is my prediction. Yay, you know.
absolutely,
Yay.
yay. And and tell us a little bit about your journey as well, because like what I noticed from your journey is that there is such a high trajectory. Like there's so many different parts of it, but also there's been such an interesting dance on how you up leveled at every step of the way. So I'm curious to know, when you first started, how did you hit that first talking about synchronistic wealth and about wealth, like how did you hit that first ground running with consistent income, and then how did you sort of keep stepping up to transform that? It seems that at each point there are certain breakthroughs that have to happen or certain growth points that need to come through. So I was curious about that.
Well, yeah, and consistency is not actually something that I have ever experienced. So consistent growth or income is more like a deliberate quantum, up leveling rather than the old trajectory, which is very corporate, push all the way up. And, we've got that old paradigm, which is very much spoken as the patriarchal paradigm. And that era was 6,500 years old, which ended in December. So we're looking back at history, assuming that is the only way that things have been. And we're assuming that part of the qualities of taking on power or energy or whatever you want to call it to up level, it would include somebody doing better than others, inherent slavery in the system, slave to the system, slave to the business, and in the history, slaves, like actually slavery of all cultures. So we have stepped out of something which was humanity looking at control and learning about control. And women were slaves in that. They were prior to the 6,500 last, it seems like so long, but I really have studied history at a very lengthy, ancient way. Women used to be representatives of the land. And so your land and how you related to the environment was very much your relationship to the priestesses who were named priestesses of the land. And when that flipped into patriarchy, ownership came in. So you could own the land and you could own women. And so we've lived through that. We're still living through that concept. In many cultures, women are still the property of men, marriage, in business. They never quite do as well because they are the property, right? And that's an old paradigm. Now we're going to see quantum shifts. So if you imagine that you are the land, that's the first shift to make, that you are not a lump of property that can be built or shifted or moved around like this. Instead, what you are is you're representative of the cycles of the things that are happening in tune with nature. And that means there is no consistency of that growth. The old paradigm, which is like a linear trajectory, that, you know, it's faster, harder, bigger, better. They're the ones on top. Now we've got divine feminine meets divine masculine as a power structure. And so you'll see many women stepping up into this paradigm because you don't have to be bigger, better, faster, harder, more stressed out. You can actually invite into spaces, collaborate with. This is divine feminine in action. And, you know, an example of the masculine flow, rather than just like strong, hard, and fast, instead is like a summer breeze blowing across a lake, the lake being the container. So business for me has, you asked, like, what are these pivotal moments? The first one that I really consciously remember was very much to do with this piece on happiness. And I had had a troubled teenagehood. My parents had split up. And throughout the teenagehood, I was in angst. Everything was sort of angsty and, you know, argumentative and fighting and upset and all of that. And then I went to India in my 20s, and I was in a very sacred place in India, and I do believe I've been in India many past lives. So when I stepped off the plane to India in my 20s, it was insane. It was chaotic, crazy, and I just had this feeling, oh, I'm home. You know, I'm home, you know, to my people. And so sure enough, when I have those kind of feelings, it's an indication that there's something very deep going to happen. And I was in Rajasthan, and in this area where they had a very famous Brahmin temple on the top of a mountain. And so one morning I woke up and I walked up on my own. And I remember seeing sort of parrots. It was so exotic compared to England at that time. You know, the parrots were flying overhead. And I decided to go and meditate on this shrine or around the shrine. And all of a sudden, I received this download, which was happiness is a choice. And at that time, I didn't know happiness was a choice. I thought some people were happy, some people were not. You could learn to be happy. Maybe at some point you made certain, ways into happiness, but it wasn't like it was a choice in any circumstance, any circumstance. And so I was alchemically altered in that moment. I was a different person from receiving that level of understanding of something than I was when I went up the mountain. And the second part then came down, which was, and you'll never be happy doing 9 to 5. And at that time I was working in film production. It was a crazy, stressy business. And by the time I came down to the bottom of the mountain, I knew that I had to step out of 9 to 5. So first step, clear step towards massive success, was stepping out of 9 to 5, stepping out of the corporate structure. And at that time, while I was traveling, they gave my job away. So when I came back to London at that time, I didn't have a job and I was really upset about it. But at the same time, I realized it was an exact perfect gift of the universe to enable me to really get this thing. Like 9 to 5 kills my spirit, and it really does for me. So I have energy that, like, sort of mountains of energy that comes through as long as I'm not ever in too much of that confined, way of being. And so I set out, like, what is going to be a lifestyle that's going to give me the most happiness? And it had to include yoga. It had to include space to be. It had to include, at that time I loved coffee, but now I love matcha lattes. So it had to include a matcha latte. And whatever that is, that's symbolic of something. It's not just the drink, it's the time that I take for self love, I would say. To be able to reflect on life is when some of my biggest ideas come through. So it's not just a matcha latte, it's actually when I allow the receiving in of big, big ideas. And I realized that it didn't matter how much money I had or didn't have, I could have that lifestyle for the rest of my life and I would be a happy bunny. And so I set up the structure of my life around happiness, and I sealed a deal with it. It was like, that is how I am happy and I will never give up on that. So yoga, I live a yogic lifestyle. And I've studied many of the ancient traditions of yoga and also of the West, which is the indigenous teachings of Britain and Ireland. So that's the priestessy work that I do.
Mhm.
And all of it had to be part of the journey, the life, the teaching, everything, and work, and work, or whatever you want to call career. I don't really think of myself as having careers. I just have expressions of
You.
what I want to express.
I feel like
So
there's so many parallels in our stories because the same thing happened with my corporate job and going
that's
through that
it.
whole journey. And then I call it the happy list. I literally had a list of what I wanted to structure life around. It's just it's amazing. Um, kind of fast forward to the wealth part, because one of the thing that stuck out to what you said was happiness is a choice. Do you feel
Yeah,
that wealth is a choice too?
I do. Yes, I do.
And why is it so hard for women leaders or even leaders of light to
Yeah.
make that choice?
Well, several things I can speak into there. Number one, women have been property for all of our lives. You need to get that. Like, this has not gone away. We've just stepped into the Aquarian age. So we will feel what's possible at a time, but it's simply like this. We've been brought up with immense prejudice. We've been brought up with immense racism, inherent, taught, institutionalized. So when I speak to my black friends around this conversation, touchy subject, but I want to go there. It is extremely hard for white privilege, particularly men, to let go of the power, to understand the journey that, say, a black man has had, to really, like, feel it in their bones. And they can even be like super conscious, lovely people, right? Because we're born into the families we're born into. And they still won't fully get what a black male experience, say in LA, West Side, has been. They won't. They can be empathetic, they can be understanding. Now, when you flip that into the situation with women, there will be all these little catchphrases that around women, and we use some of them as a joke. But really, like the dumb blonde. I'm having a dumb blonde moment. I mean, you wouldn't really say that about men. It's inherent in the way that women are considered. Oh, they change their mind. They're not serious. They talk too much. Da 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 da. All that crap. And then it becomes this. We've got layers of this perspective that is now dissolving, but we've still got it. So women stepping into the arena of the old trajectory will think they have to just be the corporate model of men, right? That's what they've been taught. And so it's going to take something for leaders who are outside of the system. I'm definitely outside of the system and super, super successful as well. And I wanted to be an example for, particularly for young girls, to be, hey, there is another way, and the other way is way more fun, and I'm living that other way. So that's one piece of it. You've got inherent cultural perspective, shall we say, and women are really part of the perspective of they're not seen as successful. And then when you add in spirituality, you've got a lot of consciousness that is around the poorer you are, the better you are. You're a good person. You're a better person. Christ consciousness. Wars were fought historically over whether Christ had money or not. That even to the point where when you look at medieval history, there were sects of these different Christian sects going out saying the church in Rome was so super wealthy and corrupt. It wanted to say Christ had money. And so it pointed to the point that there was one mention of him wearing a money belt or something, and wars were fought over it, right? Because the other wanted to say, no, he was a simple man and he was with the people and he never liked money. We have it in every religion that you can possibly imagine. The Buddha, he was a simple man. He was from a wealthy family, and he renounced all of it to live a simple life. So you've got this conflict of the mechanism of how we understand wealth. Now, abundance and wealth are not the same as just hard cash, or not the same as selling your soul to get money in to stack in a bank to never use, right? Really, really different energetics. And we have been having breakthrough moments in this as people right now, because we're starting to see that the deeper you connect to, I call it like your soul pact with self. So my soul pact with myself was the deepest expression of self-love. I know that I'm never going to do a corporate lifestyle, ever. In fact, I lead people out of it often. That's been my teaching phase. So I set my life, my highest value is happiness, not money. But how much happiness am I willing to take on? And for me, maximum happiness. So that the deal with myself, like my sacred pact to self, is that I will never sell out. I will never sell out on self. I will never sell out. And I've had those moments where you feel like, ooh, there's that edge of what seems like a good deal, but you're selling your soul. And I have always stepped back from this place, like, am I dipping into happiness or I'm selling my soul here? Because it keeps me on track. Happiness is a frequency of more, expansion, expression, receiving. It's all like, so the money follows. It's a current, and the money follows that current. And I do think that there are some people who it's their time to have wealth. I believe in reincarnation, and I believe we've had many lives. And I believe that people like, for instance, Jay-Z and Beyonce, why do those people show up? The ultimate power couple who they've got it all. She's amazing. She's sexy. They, it seemingly have it all because it's their time. And not all of us need to learn that lesson at this time, but consciously attuning to wealth, consciously being willing to talk about it, being willing to start shining the light on it. So for many years, I didn't shine the light on it. And when I did, it was like, whoa, that's when I went into property and it was just super successful. And now I'm going into another level of it. You're right that Awoken is another choice. Why did I choose Awoken? Because it's not my business. I'm aligning with Laura Correo, who I truly have a connection with, right? Connections speak to me. If I have a feeling, I've had a great feeling about you as well, and we talked about that before we came on. If I can follow those feelings, then we know we're on track, right? And expansive, and to develop something, and you just can't go wrong. And I'm very much into collaboration. So Awoken is my next, out of my own business, it's my project that I'm working on to help with the marketing and everything, because I just know it's going to pop. At some point, it is going to pop. And it will be super successful, and wealth will be attracted to it because it's a spiritual forum where people can really tap into all different spiritual methodologies and conscious lifestyle, and many things that we don't normally have a platform to speak to. So its brand is so of the time. And then we will be able to speak about money consciousness in that space. And I promise you, it will just be attracted to it like whoosh,
I can't
straight in.
wait to just be a part of that and to see it grow. There's a
Yeah.
couple of things you mentioned that I think is very, very important. And people have heard about yes, money stories, yes, receiving and stuff like that. But what I'm hearing when you're saying it is another deeper level of that. Yes, you decided to finally receive it. Yes, it's about being aware of women being property and then stepping out of that. And then there's like another level of trust that I hear that you have, the level of trust in self and the level of trust in your happiness. Sometimes even people who go through the personal development journey, go through the entrepreneurial journey and make that shift into it, make the shift into their calling, they still there are still portions of their business plan that is still linear, or it's still patriarchal, or it's still, unconsciously compromising. And what I'm
Yeah.
hearing from you is that your guidance system, you're so in tune with your guidance system or your intuition or your knowing, the feeling that you get when you connect with people or opportunities or that current that you talk about. um, how did you get that trust, and how, like, how much do you trust it? Can you describe that feeling of the relationship you have with that?
Yeah. It's a very strong development of myself as the character that I inhabit, which is the high priestess. So if we are, stepping into some like metaphysical thing, I am aware that who I am is a high priestess. I am actually one because I've been trained to be one, and I've been initiated as a high priestess. So I can use the language in it. But would I normally use that in business? Probably not. In the old patriarchal way, there's no way you would arrive into a boardroom and say, hey, ta-da, the high priestess has arrived. However, I'm so clear that's my channel. It's the method. So even when I'm talking about, there's a new instinctive program that's developing around me right now, which is that I've always worked with 95% women, total champion of women, and women's business. All of a sudden men are coming at me, and I've always had a few good men, but I realized that actually to go into this new era I need to teach men from this place of the high priestess, and there are some who are absolutely ready. And you're talking about the 11 Kings program. All of this has been channeled in the last I would say 11 days, actually. Speaking of which, 11, 11. I knew that I wanted to work on mastery. So this is how it works. So the mastery piece is coming up for me all over the place. Suddenly, a guy gets in touch with me and he says, I've watched you for 6 months. That always blows my mind. I'm like, really? Like, you know, when anybody says that, it's always a bit of a shock to me. But he said, yes, and I really want to understand your cycles, how you work with cycles in business. So he said, I have traditional mentors. I don't want that. I want this other stuff that you do. So I cautiously said, I no longer coach, which is true. I've stepped out of all my coaching programs, but I am an advisor to kings. And what kind of king are you? And if I am your advisor, I will work with you like that. And I came up with some kind of idea. That he said yes immediately. So we've started working together. And the way that I work with that is the money is no longer a traditional method. So I'm like, right, I want to work with 1111. So I'm going to charge him 11, it'll be at 1,111 per month to be his advisor as a high priestess. Now, this is really bizarre, but I'm trying to explain how I go towards a new project. And this is way down in my life. So it's not the early days when I would have gone, oh, forget it. I can't do that. I have to fit into something. Now I don't have to fit into anything. So it shows up as somebody who wants something. it's strong gut instinct. And then I know that I'm dealing with mastery because I'm really at that phase in my life. So all of a sudden, I'm receiving it. I'm not doing it. I'm receiving it. And I start to see, well, I definitely don't want to be in a run coaching programs anymore. So how can this look to still be a mentor of somebody? And I've thought I only want to work with 11 at any given time. It's not about the money. It's about the exchange and what I'm doing for New Earth, really. And all of a sudden, this thing has arisen. In a way, it's been invited in. I also know that it's absolutely tied to working with people who are real movers and shakers on the planet, and he really is. So it's how you get your information. If I blocked that and I started going, I'm not working with men because women are 95% of my client base, right? How could I possibly do this audacious thing here with men and really speak into it like suddenly out of the blue like this? I would be operating in the old system, which would be I want to fit in, I want it to work, I want, all of these things. So I allow this information through deep spaciousness, through walking in nature, through meditating, through all sorts of things. And I listen and I get I channel as well. So I get big pieces of downloads, which were like that happiness is a choice thing. And if I sell out on that idea, if I go, oh, no, I'm just going to fit in and make 95% of women, that's my client base, because it looks more logical and it looks like there's the money in it, then I would be missing this really vital piece that's coming, which will make me stand apart probably, because there's not many people who are specifically working with men as a high priestess in business and advising kings, right? Who is doing that? Nobody. So all of a sudden, I've got a super niche. Now we're speaking business, an absolute super niche, right? And because I've worked for many years, this will be a very high frequency, high ticket offer working with people. And I actually also know that I want to work with billionaires. And that wasn't something as a checklist like, hey, let's do millionaires and then let's do billion. It isn't. It was because I realized the urgency of some of these projects that need to go out on New Earth need that level of money. They really do. And they need it in the hands of the good guys, in the hands of enlightened spiritual beings who are caring for the environment, for the animals, and for the people. And so I'm stepping into that realm and I'm willing to. But the normal traditional look of millions or billions has never interested me. The Ferrari baby and all of that stuff. I have no interest in that. I have an interest in what that level, at a high level frequency, can do for our planet. So I will now develop that thing. And it's just the same as like when you're that authentic with yourself and you don't dismiss these bizarre ideas that come through, these genius ideas, which sets you so far apart from others, and honor it. That's that sacred pack thing. Then I know I'm on the right path. And all of it is not around money being stored in a bank. It's around money flowing all over the universe, and I can be a conduit for it. But if I could do like a few major things in my life before I die, I'd be so happy. Again, it's like, so why not go for it?
It's an amazing feeling to have when the dream is not only just impact based, but the dream is almost offered to you in your meditations and your silence. And, billionaires and millionaires and multi-millionaires like arriving in your presence is almost like it's it's not forced, it's really in flow. Like when we talk about synchronistic wealth, it's so synchronistically it just appeared in front of you, and so you said yes to it, and not only did you have no resistance towards it, or maybe you did or whatever, but like it just kind of just working on the flow, or like being in the flow and allowing that to happen. How do you translate this into specifically sales and enrollment conversations? Because Oftentimes, the vision is clear, the intention is clear, even the alignment to the impact of billions is clear. Yet, when sometimes people get into their sales conversations, when that billionaire is in front of them, still choke up. So, yeah, talk
Well,
about a little bit about
great,
those moments.
yeah, great piece of advice for everybody out there is if you can live this level of authenticity. And so a big piece that I do is I talk about super niching. That's not niching, it's super niching. So you've got to have, I think, at least three strands of flavor, if you like, to your business. And I'll give you an example of this. So when you are that authentically declaring yourself, I want to give you a few examples actually, but I'll start with one. So when you think about, I worked with a lot of people in the alternative business, like yoga business. You could assume that yoga businesses are, super spiritual, not really money oriented. However, I know that at least 7 years ago, just in the States, the yoga business was worth 27 billion, right? That just in the States, not worldwide. And that was at least 7 years, maybe 10 years ago, it was considered that. So we know that yoga has big money. So then I get these yoga teacher training people who come into my space because I've been a very long-term yogi and I want to help them. And the first thing they'll come up with, well, I'm a yoga teacher. Great. So what, And it doesn't mean anything. It has no inherent value whatsoever in the world of business to say I'm a yoga teacher. So then it will be, okay, well, could you define something unusual about yourself? Okay, I'm a yin yoga teacher. Better, but even so, it's still not going anywhere. You need a third strand to that. So people often, the pieces that they don't want to tell you about, are the bits that you really want to bring out. So what are they hiding? And often it will be something like, oh, they had a period of addiction, they lost a baby, that something tragic happened. That's the juice right there. And they mostly don't want to do that. So I had a woman who is just amazing, and she was doing this yoga thing. And then she admitted that she'd actually had a stillbirth, and it had been this huge moment in her life, tragedy, very tough to get through. But she really wanted to work on the yoga. And I said, no, 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 I really want you to work on this. Like, that's what's going to define you. When you can express yourself at that level of saying, I'm the one who can take women through that journey, the shadow work, all the way through, because I've been there. And I'm going to include the yoga. So it might be yin yoga, aimed at women who have had, and we called it the unexpected birth, right? Because those are the bits that nobody wants to talk about. They want to talk about happy bundles of joy coming in. They don't want to talk about postnatal depression. They don't want to talk about all the women who've had miscarriages or who have had unexpected births. And I said, don't call it the miserable end of that, like stillbirth yoga. Let's bring in that idea of the unexpected. Then she's got a super niche. And you can use it in any way that you think about. So if for instance you wanted to be on an upbeat level, my favorite time of day, no matter where I am in the world, is around sunset, twilight, that time. So if I wanted to add anything to my particular flavor, I could add that in. I could say all my workshops, all the work I do is we're going to do retreats around the world, all to hit that sunset time around the world. And it suddenly becomes a very different proposition. So that's the first bit you do. Second bit is complete authenticity, 100% authenticity. It's so that bit, like I just had a conversation with Laura Correo, funnily enough. She phoned me just before this, which means it's about 3:30 in the morning for her. And she had been told to write a letter to a production team in LA by somebody who had, recommended that she tweak something and leave the woo out. And I said, oh, no, 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 no. Not if you're, I said, as a business coach, I was the one who was like, no, put the woo in. because that's who you are. And so she read this dry letter to me, taking out the woo, and the woo was nothing. It was such a tiny little bit of it, but it was saying, oh, the alignment this week, it's Chinese New Year and it's the new moon and all of this, the timing is perfect. And she wanted to leave that out because somebody had told her that it sounds less professional. And I'm like, no, 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 put that in. That's what those people are looking at from you. So the more authentic and the more that you don't hide the bits that you're embarrassed about, that you feel shame about, that you've been taught shame. So, really it's like, what's the story you don't want to tell, right? What is that story? That's the story to tell. When? Now. Like now. And the more that you get to that place, it's like you are cutting edge. Nobody can hurt you because you're owning your life. You will always split an audience. You want that. You don't want to speak to like, who's my audience? Oh, people. Terrible avatar. So when you're in sales at this level of selling, it doesn't occur as selling. It occurs as 100% authenticity. So when I spoke to that guy recently, the one who approached me, and I'm thinking what's going on for me is I don't want to do another coaching course because I've stepped out of that, right? Through my channeling, I was told stop all your coaching last year. Before pre-COVID, I was given guidance on what I should do. So I started doing massive digital events and I've been guided so well, in that way. And then this guy comes up and I'm thinking, oh, I'm tempted. Like I'm really tempted to just whip together some kind of coaching course. But I know that the higher guidance is I'm stepping out of that. I'm going behind the scenes. So I give him the weirdest proposition ever. What kind of king are you? I'm an advisor to kings. And he is working with a big, 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 big project, which I didn't know at the time. But he was able to relate, like he is at a king level of his business or his life. And he really related to that. And then he also relates to, it's a bit like epic fantasy, having somebody like Merlin the wizard or the high priestess who's advising you, but he gets it. It's an archetype. When you're at that level, you need people at that level who understand and speak in your weird terms. So when I put that forward, there's no sale. I'm like, would you like this? Would you be interested in this? This is where I'm at with this. And this is really what I can give you the best of myself. And it was so easy. There's no salesiness like I'm, building up to this conversation. It was just like, this is what I can do at this time. I'm not going to do any coaching with you in the traditional way. I'm going to be your advisor. And he just said yes. But with all enrollment, there's another piece to it. It's like if I was an obsessional Prince fan, so he's behind me, and I would go to all these after shows and I would say to people like, oh my God, like Prince is in town. You have no idea because it's not public. And there's these amazing after shows and they go on from like midnight to 4 a.m. and you get to see him like that far away and he's just playing his best stuff. And if I don't finish that off, which is, and I want you to come with me, and this is the time, and this is where it is, and this is how much it will cost. You're missing out. So I come at everything with that first energy, which is like, Prince is in town. The 11 Kings program is happening. Same thing. But if I don't actually invite them, it's not a sale. It's got this dead weight where you're uncomfortable about the rest of it. The actual whole flow is like, honey, Prince is in town. There's this amazing after show I want you to come to. And it's, next Tuesday and it'll cost you like 25 quid. And I want you to come with me. Like, come with me. And you would just go, yeah, if you were in London and if he was alive. That's sales. And it's not sales. It's not the way we're taught it, but that's exactly what it is. It's total enrollment, authenticity, and 100% willingness to give the whole package. So never hide the money. Never ever hide the money. I never hide the money. I'm just straight up. In fact, if you hide the money, people can feel that. Whoa, they've presented all of this. If you lead in for too long, it's boring. I'm just like, okay, tell me the money. Like, what is the money piece here? Yeah, so
I love
that's,
it. I love the way that you describe it as well because I feel like when you're talking about the whole flow, it almost feels like tennis, right? You got to follow through, or it feels like dance where you have to spin and you have to finish that spin. And so when you're talking about sales and as a bringing in the energy of the invitation and then also offering them, the next bit where they can hold your hand and continue with you is a much less forceful. It's a much more respectable way of just presenting that information.
yeah,
um yeah, so I also know that you're preparing a meditation for us,
yeah.
um around how to embody some of the work that we've been speaking about today, and also how to activate. I know you have this vision that is incredible vision that you received of, creating more millionaires or creating more light workers so that, we can light up the world and just, empower people who are in that authenticity and in that purpose to really activate. So tell us a little bit more about your meditation.
Well, I think I'd rather you just experience it, but these are typical meditations that I do. I do channeling, and I don't do the type where I speak in a funny voice and I'm taken over by somebody. I go into a space. I never know where we're going. I know what I'm aiming for this group to understand, and that's it. And then we're just led into it. And just allow yourself to experience it. It's a frequency shift. But this is how I work with, clients as well, and all the spiritual work I do. And it causes you to shift your energy so that you will, if you're worried about something about money or well being or whatever, you can just drop that now. And this will actually cause something in those areas.